see a man walking down a road. He goes to cross, looks to see if cars are coming, and enters into a swimming baths. His walk is fast, nervous, looking for someone, anyone. He checks some cubicles and just about misses someone putting a towel over the door. He leaves and walks through another door into another area of the swimming baths. We see a shotgun. 2 shots are fired and a cleaner is killed. The gunman turns, walks away and out of the building. Next we cut back to the body. The camera lingers on the scene. The blood, the gore. There's no music, no screams, just silence as we look at the lifeless body before us. We want to cut away, but the shot still lingers on. It's unpleasant and unnerving. Next we cut to a petrol station. We see from the other side of the road a man at the counter, when out of the darkness a car pulls into the forecourt, and from afar we see another man get out, walk into the petrol station and simply shoot the man behind the counter. The camera again lingers on the body. This formula pretty much does not change for the next 35 minutes or so, and the film is Alan Clarke's Elephant. We will see over the course of its running time 18 murders, with barely any dialogue or idea who these people are, either the murderers or the victims. Just simple killing after killing after killing. Our setting is Northern Ireland during the Troubles, when Republican and Loyalist paramilitaries in the British Army fought an undeclared war that cost almost 3,500 lives from the 1960s to the 1990s. Many of the killings we see in Elephant were based on police reports of actual sectarian murders, and the titular elephant refers to a quote from Irish writer Bernard McLafferty, who described the Troubles as the elephant in the living room. From 2014 to 2019, I was in a relationship with a woman who lived in a small village outside Newry in South Armagh. It had its own grim ties to the Troubles. A British soldier had been discovered in the local pub, undercover, and was driven across the border and killed. To this day, his body has never been found. The suspects in the killing still lived in the area, and occasionally you would see them going on with their lives, and it always struck me how normal it all seemed. People knew killers lived amongst their midst, and that was that, and yet I felt it seemed more of a big deal than many of the locals. But then why would they? This was just their lives. The Good Friday Peace Agreement officially brought peace to Northern Ireland, but it doesn't tell the whole story, I believe. Despite being officially at peace, the ghosts and trauma remain, and it can be quite jarring at times. Never have I been to part of the world whereby people are so open about their identity. Simply driving from one place to another, you'll see a huge tricolour of the Irish flag, and then a few minutes later, Union Jack bunting and red and white painted curbsides. People want to show you who they are. They want you to know what tribe they're in. And I can't help think there was a subtle warning too. They were letting you know you were not one of them. I always felt like kind of an interloper. I considered myself English, but of course I'm, I suppose, technically British, in a relationship with an Irish Republican. And if I'm honest, I kind of liked it, and more often not enjoyed winding up the locals with my fake British twattiness. But I did often find myself wondering what the future would hold for Ireland. To me, I always sensed the Troubles were there. My girlfriend and her friends and family all seemed sure one day Ireland would be reunited through peace or violence. But at what cost, I wondered, and certainly the strains of Brexit and the lack of government have brought this question back to the fore. Would the past one day repeat itself? In 2019, I watched a Mark Cousins film, 50 Years of the Troubles, a journey through film, in which Cousins talked about the Troubles in his own unique way, and it was the first time I saw a clip from Alan Clarke's Elephant. Clarke was one of the foremost filmmakers working on British television in the 70s and 80s. His films were typically violent, confrontational, unpleasant, funny, daring, and often very experimental, none more so than 1989's Elephant. Produced by Danny Boyle and shown once at the BBC before being buried after a wave of controversy, it is all these years later a compelling, sobering work that serves as a stark reminder of Northern Ireland's tragic history. Boyle at the time was working in Northern Ireland for the BBC and flew home at weekends, and his experience of the Troubles was this: what was happening was largely going unreported back on mainland Britain. The murders were mostly ignored by the mainstream press, and more often than not, someone would be shot, the perpetrators were never caught, and for all intents and purposes, most people outside of Northern Ireland were none the wiser. The fact of the matter was, civilians were being killed in large numbers. These were statistics, crimes never to be dissolved, and Bowl wanted to make a film that showed what was actually going on. Enter Clarke, who immediately was attracted to the project, but this was also not his first foray into making films about the Troubles. In 1985 he had made a film called Contact about a squad of paratroopers in South Armagh, although it was actually filmed in Yorkshire. Now, Contact is an observational piece. It's a gripping film. There's no real dialogue, just a very real and at times tense work where you feel you're on patrol with the soldiers, constantly seeing threat and danger in abandoned cottages, or a discarded clip from a machine gun that could possibly be a booby trap. It's disorientating, frightening. You don't particularly feel anything for the soldiers who are watching. They're not heroic, there's no banter between any of them. They're just men doing their job in a terrifying place. It's worth seeking out, and it's a good precursor, I think, for watching Elephant. Unlike Contact, though, Elephant was filmed in Northern Ireland, mostly in and around Belfast, where the killings were happening. The Belfast I came to know and love was a lively place. Not the most pretty of cities in Ireland, I think that crown would have to go to Galway, but it had a real sense of history, from the shipbuilding to, of course, the Troubles, with its murals to the various icons on either side. In Elephant, we see 1980s Belfast. It's bleak, forbidding, with a presiding sense of menace lurking in the air. And it is where the action in Elephant begins. What you immediately notice in the film is the purpose of the gunman. Walking is a recurring theme in Clarke's work, and here he uses long Steadicam shots with Kubrick's Steadicam regular John Ward, which rank amongst the most impressive shots I've seen using the camera setup. There is something uniquely interesting about Steadicam or follow shots and how they are used in films. They are not first person or third person. That is, they are not from a character point of view or from an angle such as the side or the front. In the third person, the focus of the viewer's attention is more often than not located on the face or the subject or subjects. In a follow shot, we cannot see the subject's face. We have nothing with which to focus or to discern intention or emotion. We are simply becoming observers to the subject, fixated on their forward movement, dragging us along with them. What we do in our heads is assume that by the nature of following, we are heading from one place to another. In simple terms, we are heading from A to B with the assumption that B will offer some kind of conclusion to the subject's journey. And in Elephant, Clarke does not make it clear who we are following. Sometimes it's the murderer, sometimes it's the victim. In scene 5, we follow two men walking along a park. The purpose of their walk is fast. There's no dialogue, just the sounds of the steps on the soundtrack. In the distance, we see someone approaching. Is this to be their victim? We assume that because there is two of them, that they are the murder team. This poor person approaching is, for whatever reason, completely oblivious that they're about to be killed. Yet the man walks past. Then comes the fear. It is they who are about to be killed. And then it happens. The man reappears and calmly shoots one whilst the other runs for his life. For a sequence so short, the suspense generated is almost unbearable. The relentless forward motion of the camera, as in the other murders, give a feeling of momentum that we see over and over, ever conclude in one outcome. And there are tiny amendments to the formula of the scenes that go further to unsettle you into thinking you've got a hold on the film or can some way predict what's going to happen.
Were you in last night?
Yeah, sure you know it was. Anyway, what's it got to do with you?
Shit!
In one of the scenes, we see a group of young men in factory overalls playing football. They kick the ball over to one another, and then another man appears and begins to join the game. He asks one of them if he was in last night, and it's clearly a question he knows the answer to. The man wasn't, so he is shot. He was always going to be. Perhaps the murdered man was an informer. Perhaps the night before he was out killing someone and this is the reprisal. But I found this scene particularly harrowing because Northern Ireland is a small community. People know each other from both sides of the divide. Families are large and interconnected. When context is removed, the film becomes a portal through which you find yourself inserting your own interpretation into it. And what I find distressing about this one in particular is it seems that the men do know each other. Otherwise, why does the victim not run away immediately? Either way, you see a murder, another body, and another family's life ruined. It's matter of fact and goes on and on and on. The film is radically experimental because from the first murder in Elephant, it challenges you what to expect from narrative cinema. There is no score, no exposition, nothing that we normally would come to expect from a film. Once you realise this is unlike any film you've seen before, its simplicity becomes its genius. By dispensing with convention and formula, Clarke sharpens your focus. You simply cannot look away or be distracted by anything other than the acts of violence themselves. You cannot not be drawn into it. The constant repetition of killings becomes bleaker and bleaker, and you ask yourself, when will this end? And I'm sure people watching it at the time must have been thinking, this needs to end. And one has to admire any filmmaker who is daring enough to make such a work. It's worth noting Elephant was not made for cinema. It's a TV movie, although it almost feels like an art installation. You can watch it from any moment and it will still have the same effect. It takes violence and reminds you of just how awful it is. And you will notice in the film that the streets are always empty. There's no witness to the killings. You become, through the film's style, a voyeur, gliding along behind the assailants. And along with the ultra-wide lens, gives you a huge window into this world. You become completely, like an art installation, immersed into it. It's deeply unsettling on a visceral level because we know these types of killings actually happened and no one was safe. The shootings go beyond class. We see terraced houses, offices above a shop, large houses in the suburbs. This could be anyone, whether they deserved it or not, and it could happen to anyone. But it is the final killing that is a subtly awful moment. A man completely unaware marches into a warehouse where a gunman asks him to face the wall and he is promptly shot in the back of the head. We know now that many of the deaths in the trouble were those of informers. More often than not, these people disappeared with loved ones being informed of their fate after. Is this person going to be one of these disappeared as they are known as now? Well, of course, the film never lets you find out. Elephant called outrage on its initial release, or I wonder what were the people outraged about. You can't call the film gratuitous because the entire premise of it is violence. It is an essay on that theme and it is central to what Elephant is about. You cannot say it lacks characterization because it never seeks to establish such a thing anyway. Maybe simply people didn't want to believe that this was happening, and their reaction against it was a kind of defense mechanism, a way of ignoring the problem, which in reality was the very thing the film was trying to stop people from doing. I believe Elephant is an extraordinary film. It's unlike anything you have ever watched before. You could try to categorize it. It could be an action film of sorts, a war film, whatever you want, but nothing can really accurately describe the experience of watching Elephant. It's unique, original, and in an age where controversy is so often avoided, a timely reminder that film can ruffle feathers and force us to confront what we would much rather ignore. So that's going to be it for this episode of the 24 Frames cast. I will be returning very shortly with another episode. If you want to follow me on Twitter, it's Thomas24FC, and you can email me at 24framescast@gmail.com. Many thanks for listening, and I'll be in contact soon. Bye.